afternoon. It's a joy to welcome you for this event. My name is Alan Ewing-Merrill, and I serve as the Executive Director of the BTS Center, which is a private foundation located in Portland, Maine, building on the legacy of the former Bangor Theological Seminary. It's such a joy to be together on this beautiful Friday afternoon. At least it's beautiful here in Maine. And we're so delighted to have with us Maren Tirabassi, whom I will introduce in just a moment. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Nicole Dieroff, who is the program director here at the BTS Center, and by Kay Ahmed, who serves as our office manager. They're both going to be kind of working behind the scenes, recording the event, managing the chat box, dealing with any security issues that might come up, and making sure that everything runs smoothly. So feel free to engage in the chat box if you wish to do that. It's a perfectly fine thing to do. And if it's bothersome to you, you can just ignore the chat box. But we'd love to have you ask questions or maybe repeat back a phrase that you heard that really resonated for you, whatever is meaningful to you. But now I'd like to take a moment to welcome our distinguished guest. We're so delighted to have you with us, Maren. Reverend Maren Tirabassi is the author of 21 books. And I suspect that many of you who are gathered here today are here because you either are friends with Maren or you follow her work, or maybe just because this seemed like an intriguing program here 2 weeks before Christmas. But we're here in particular because she's recently published this one that we'll be sharing more about in a few moments, Christmas Eve at the Epsom Circle McDonald's and Other Poems. Many of Maren's books have been published by Pilgrim Press, including A Child Laughs, Prayers of Justice and Hope, Gifts in Open Hands, More Resources for the Global Community, and Transgendering Faith, which was nominated for a Lambda Award. As she says in her about the author here, Maren's love for all things Christmas is obvious in her short story collection, The Shakespeare Reader and Other Christmas Tales, which places the bard's characters into seasonal plots. There she is, holding it up for us. Holiday audio productions include Sticky Mittens and Angel Feet, and I Think I See a Star. Wonderful, these would make good Christmas gifts, I think. In addition to receiving the Pilgrim Press Leadership Award, she served as Poet Laureate of the City of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for a time, and served as Scholar in Residence at Vaughan Park Anglican Retreat Center in Aotearoa, New Zealand. She's a graduate of Union Theological Seminary in New York City and Harvard Divinity School. She's served UCC congregations in New England since 1980. And for much of her ministry, she has also been teaching in some really interesting alternative settings. I hope we'll hear a little bit about that today. And she lives in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So, Maren, welcome to this gathering. As I said to you when we met last week, I've been following you for a long, long time, really throughout my ministry, which is more than 20 years, and just really delighted in and appreciated your liturgical pieces and your poetry, although we hadn't had a chance to meet until yesterday or till last week on Zoom. But it's so wonderful to have you with us today, and thank you for saying yes to this invitation. We have a bunch of people who are here with us on Zoom and more who are joining us on Facebook Live. Welcome to all of you today. Maren.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I am delighted to have my first Zoom interview. I've done a lot of readings where I was in control, but this is the first time to use this sort of wonderful technology that I've been using to preach and teach and do a variety of things in this interactive way. So I'm looking forward to it. I also am delighted with everyone who's come, and look forward to answering questions, and also, if at all possible, reading poems. It's always easier to read the poems than it is to freehand questions.
I promise I'll go easy on you.
Thanks.
No, really looking forward to this. We are going to experiment with some fireside chats over the winter months, and this is the first. So you're our first guest, and we're glad to have you with us. Why don't you start with a poem? If that's a
Oh,
place of comfort for you, let's just start our time off with a poem of your choice. Maybe one from the new collection, if you wish.
oh, it will be. Um, I've marked a few.
I see that. Wonderful.
Depending on what you ask me. But the one that is the title poem, Christmas Eve at the Epsom Circle, McDonald, and other poems, that's the old one. And I've written so much Christmas poetry and prayers. A lot of these poems began as prayers, and to make them more available to more people, some of the prayers have changed into poems. But since 2011, I've written, not this year, but since that time, I've written a prayer or a poem every day during the season of Advent, which means I had this glob of poetry, and I said, what do I choose? And this poem, Christmas Eve at the Epsom Circle, McDonald's. So as I say, this is the only old one. It was in my 2000 collection. I had just written it. I said, that's the feeling I want for the poems that I choose. That's how I want to focus these, that kind of heart and that kind of hope. So Epsom Circle is in New Hampshire. It's probably, you could put your own name in there for the McDonald's. The Christmas Eve at the Epsom Circle McDonald's. The kids with Santa hats are selling hamburgers more cheerfully because they feel the season and are glad for early closing. A boyfriend comes in and hangs over the counter, pressing against tattered garland looped to the finger level of children. A family with 3 toddlers, jazzy with excitement, are traveling to Maine in the drizzle of the holy evening. The littlest boy in red and green plaid Oshkosh runs in circles, strangling French fries in his hand. Tired of the car and already ready for presents in bed, his little sneakers tramp like angel feet. An older couple in a corner talk quietly about their daughter, who's been dead 4 Christmases now. They could have gone to their son-in-law's house. His kind new wife invited them with her family, but it didn't seem right. And this was the very brightest place. It looked like a star when they drove down the highway, and they knew there would be children. A divorced dad with Budweiser on a black t-shirt jokes with his 6-year-old daughter over milkshakes. A clumsily wrapped present perches on the molded plastic seat. He is trying to make the very best treat he can of their Christmas hour before bringing her back to her mom's house. Brown eyes shine at him, and he thinks she's excited for later, for Santa and all, but she's looking at him all over, memorizing the gift. The preacher is on her way to church to remember Bethlehem out loud for the folks who come to break bread and light little candles with paper circles on them that keep the wax from dripping on their hands as they sing Silent Night. Most of them have heard the story about the child before, and so has she. She has come here first, just to sit for a while and watch the Christmas Eve communion.
Beautiful. Thank you for that poem, so rich with imagery. And I was thinking as you read it, my wife Sarah and I and our kids have more than once traveled on Christmas Day to be with family and stopped at a quick bite to eat. So a very familiar setting that you have there. And I often wonder about the people sitting in the booths nearby in those times. So thank you. You have pastored several churches, mostly part-time. intentionally part-time, and you continue to serve pretty regularly as an interim and as a guest preacher. And throughout that time, you've been writing poetry for a long, long time. And for more than 25 years, you shared that you've been teaching in some really interesting settings. So I get the sense that you understand these to be three integrated pieces of your calling and vocation. Can you talk a little bit about that, about these three parts of your vocation: pastoring, poetry, and teaching, and how they interact, how they connect with each other, maybe dance with each other or enrich one another?
Surely. So I started writing poetry when I was 6 years old. When I was in the fifth grade, I decided I had some sort of school assignment, and I decided that I wanted to be a minister when I grew up. Now, this was 4 years after the Presbyterians had actually started to ordain women. And this was Park Avenue Presbyterian in Des Moines, Iowa, not a hotbed of liberalism. But I went to the pastor, and he so affirmed me and said, "You must go to my seminary, Union Theological Seminary in New York City," and gave me a key to his office so I could use his library. I'm a fifth grader. And so those two things started at that point. Came out of college, and I actually ended up working in the commercial theater, Broadway and on the road, before going to seminary. But it was that call to seminary and then the ministry that was strongest at that point. And then after I had been in the ministry for about 13 years, I realized, that I didn't like serving big churches. I liked to be able to work with youth and elderly people and just all sorts of Christian ed and do all that sort of stuff. And so that was a piece impelling me, but also I was feeling a very strong call to writing. However, when you write half-time, and I had one book, I had Touch Holiness was already out. When you write part-time and our pastor part-time, you cannot get food on the table. It's not enough in small churches. So I said, what can I do? And I started teaching writing and literacy with new Americans, English language learners, in correctional facilities, in assisted living facilities and nursing homes, in survivors groups, both around incest and surviving cancer. A lot of those synagogues and churches and queer groups, like queer teenagers and things like that. So a variety of kinds of places that were all very different and that invited me into a lot of stories. So I did that, and I'm going to read a poem about
Wonderful.
one of the ones. And this is, because it doesn't happen all that often, I always ask people, do you want to write this story or do you want me to write it? And this was one of those that an inmate resident at the Bridgewater, Massachusetts correctional facility. And the writing prompt was snow. So he told this story and asked me if I would in fact write it for him. So this is snow. Well, it didn't snow much in Philadelphia, not on Delancey Street, but he remembers one year, one December it was, when his mama told him to run fast and get his sled before the wet snow melted off the street. She made his sisters get off their butts and watch him, which they were not happy to do. But oh, how the wind blew in his face, and he almost went right under a car. Later, he warmed his hands above the burner on the stove and drank hot chocolate. Oh, and one other time, he was walking with his girlfriend Angel home from school. He was a teenager then, but it was before he started getting into trouble. They were real sweet, nothing more because Mama was strict. But it was the last day before winter vacation, and the snow started coming down, slush messy on the pavement. But on Angel's black hair, it was white stars and pretty, just like his grandmama's tatting on the back of a sofa. He was planning to tell Angel he loved her, but like he said, she was just so sweet, and he didn't want to spoil all that sweetness with his badass self. But now he wishes he had said something to her, something about how good and warm he felt when he looked at her, like the Jersey Shore, even in winter, something crazy like that. Or maybe how he wanted to be good for her. But that was the night Angel and her 4 brothers were killed in the big fire that took down a whole block of Delancey Street projects. And that's how he remembers snow, all light and sparkling on a girl's black hair like she was frosted pretty for Christmas. That, and sledding too, and just how fast a little boy can go downhill.
Wow, beautiful, profound, and a wonderful illustration of the ways in which your ministry, and I don't mean just ministry in a church, your ministry and your teaching and your poetry weave together in a way that you're able to elicit that story from this man, and then to tell it in such a powerful way. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, my ideal goal for people is for them to write their own stories.
Sure.
I teach poetry. I also teach memoir and brief memoir, personal essays. But for some people, they want the story out and they want to be able to talk it. And then they want me to be able, I don't have his voice. I try not to do his voice. I try to just have my voice for it. But it's important that those stories get heard.
Sure. And his telling it to you was a sacred trust. And entrusting that story to you to tell it for him. I wonder, did you share the poem with him, and what was his reaction to it, if so?
He loved it.
He loved it. Yeah, you captured it.
I would have never published it.
Right.
It was not a, I would never, if I'm telling somebody's story, I never put it in anything. I
Sure.
don't even do reading where I know that, that 6 people have come out to a library and are going to listen to me read. I wouldn't do it there. So that's around the ethics of sort of telling people stories.
Of course, yeah, that makes sense. But it says a lot about the trust that he had for you, that he would entrust you to write his story. Yeah, thank you. So we are midway through the season of Advent for those from the Christian tradition, which is a season of 4 weeks of spiritual preparation and anticipation for the celebration of Christmas, for the retelling and once again celebrating the birth of Christ. Christmas is just 2 weeks from today. Somehow that happened. As you're making your way through Advent this year, as Christmas approaches, I wonder what themes or feelings or theological concepts seem especially alive for you, maybe especially this year.
And I am, in fact, doing a six-week interim right now for First Congregational Church of Wakefield. It's the kind of simple, the interim pastor left at the end of November and their new called pastor arrives in January. But they need somebody there for a few weeks. So I'm literally doing the sermons and the things. And I would say, sing it. Because people have missed a lot about churches, but one of the deepest things, even if they're doing a hybrid sanctuary or in-person worship, I don't think anyone's still doing that right now, but they may be, is that you can't sing. And so I've been inviting people and would invite people to put their heart into carols, into those things that are profound, and sort of avoid the we wait until Christmas Eve business, because people need that comfort. We began Advent with "Comfort ye my people," and I think that that's a very powerful thing. Another thing that I came up with, sort of as I was thinking about this and telling stories about where carols came from and things like that, is that this is a time to be looking for our silent night, so that that came out of a broken organ. You know, maybe it was mice, and maybe it was floods, and maybe it was just a geriatric organ and it broke down. But the sort of sense that we have that our church situation is broken. But what happened from that was the use of the lyrics and the music to create a song that could be sung to a guitar on Christmas Eve. In the Mentz in Oberghof, Austria, which was urban, just after a war that had divided family from family. It had been split in the summer down the river, which meant the residential areas were in Austria. The church and the town was in Germany, so they were dealing with heavy, angry divisiveness, as well as this sense of everything they wanted from Christmas Eve wasn't going to happen. And this song, Yet, was a powerful one. So that's sort of looking for the gifts, rather than, I mean, I have hosted so many personal pity parties about, well, we can't do this and we can't do that. And then just, you know, I've lost 3 friends to COVID-19, and so many more who are sick. And so, you know, you got this sort of the whine in the heart. So, and the other thing I would say to clergy is to listen to people's feelings, but not absorb it, to not sort of, are you willing to listen to a funny poem?
Sure. Let's listen to a funny poem.
Well, it was funny to me. I don't know if it was funny to you, but, and she says, where is this particular? This was an ordinary cold. This was an ordinary cold when I was in church. So you will see what it reflects. 'Twas the cold before Christmas, and all through the church, disinfectant I wiped and tissues I searched. The sermon I wrote was as short as a wick, and that clamp laryngitis make my vocal cords thick. My throat was on fire, my cough it was croupy, my nose red like a reindeer, but moist as a puppy. All my Kleenex was crumpled, my lozenges shiny, my headache was pounding, my eyes, they felt briny. I went home to wrap presents, and my smile, it was pasted, but my family knew that I really was wasted. So they sent me to bed with a bottle of pills, socks for my feet, a space heater for chills. And all Christmas Day, they made breakfast, played games, drove the grandmothers home, till I finally exclaimed, I'm the mother. I'm needed. I'm in charge of the feast. Without me, it won't happen. No, not in the least. I struggled to stand to my plans, gave a whistle, but they all flew away like Clement Moore's thistle. I sorted used ribbon in spite of frustration, but a nap, it enveloped my brave desperation. So defeated in bed, 'twas a whisper I heard. Christmas, it said, doesn't come with your words. The angel continued, I could just see the wings. Christmas, you know, doesn't mean you can sing. Christmas has come to the ill and the sneezing. Christmas has come to the cranky or pleasing, to the old or the young, to rich, middling, and poor. To the sad, it's a comfort. To the drowning ashore. Christmases come in spite of your plans, or the fact that your plans are in other folks' hands. Christmases come by the child and the light, so laugh at yourself, blow your nose, and good night. So
Wonderful.
I think for those of us who are clergy, just knowing that it's not us making it happen, and then accepting the bickering and the criticizing that it is, as Clement Morris Thistle, it's just gonna go.
Thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about this particular collection. Where can we find it? How did it come to be? What is your hope for it? Tell us a little bit about this is your 21st, right?
It is indeed.
So tell us about it.
Okay, it came together because of Christmas Eve at the Epsom Circle McDonald. That's how I did it. It also, so I retired 4 years ago. But again, when you have pension on halftime and didn't get into the Social Security system until the window opened up in 2001, you keep on working in churches. And so I promised them all that as soon as I retired, I would have this book of Christmas poems. And that was 4 years ago. So I'm allowed to say that guilt is a motivator many times. So I put it together early this year, and then I had to open it up and respond to the pandemic. So it was a little late in its coming together because I felt like that was an important thing, even though probably more people will read it next year than this year because publishing is packed and shipping is tough. So, and I wanted some O antiphons, and I wanted part of a series that I have done reflecting on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I wanted a chapter just full of stories like snow, like people I meet in nursing homes and people I meet in different, all those different places. A lot of immigrant stories. So I wanted all these things and sort of put it together. So I was too late for traditional publishing. So I went to Book Baby, which is a wonderful self-publishing agency, and which I encourage people that I do book coaching for to think about. I say, send this book around for 10 months. And if it doesn't get picked up, publish it yourself. Just know that you want to give your gift to the world. There is no, it's more important to be traditionally published. So anyway, the best way for people to get it would be from the Book Baby site. Christmas Eve at the Epsom Circle McDonald's. They have Book Baby store. So that does so easily. Ebooks are clearly out in both Nook, Kobo, and Kindle. And there are some local indies in the New Hampshire area, Gibson's in Concord, Portsmouth, River Run, and South Berwick, Maine. A Little Something gift shop have copies. And finally, I will send you one. So I have stock, and this is really peculiar. I'm going to say, if you wanted me to send you a book, you need to write me at mctirabassi@gmail.com and tell me that you want it, and tell me if you want it autographed and to whom, you or somebody else. And then you have to go to mctirabassi@hotmail.com, my ancient email, but nevertheless the place that PayPal goes to. And you need to pay me on PayPal. And if you want it to go media mail, it's $18. And if you want it to go priority mail, it's $22.
Maybe we can collect up those directions and send them out to folks who registered. Yeah, that would be great.
They just have the Gmail address, mctirabassi@gmail. I will respond to them with details.
Perfect.
And all the other ways to get it. So there,
it is It is a wonderful collection, and it's all in there, including the chapter Reflections on the Pandemic for Advent and Christmas, which I really appreciated. Those feel so current and relevant. We had a question in the chat box from Marianne asking about the poem that you read a moment ago about colds and which collection that's in.
Oh, they're all in this.
That's in this one too. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think
So
I put specifically some humorous, doggerel poems in there because I think we need to laugh this year.
Laughter is good medicine, especially during a pandemic, right? Try to make sure I laugh every day.
So some of them are quite serious, but
yes, sure. Right. If you're just joining us, we are talking with Maren Tirabassi, who is a pastor, a poet, and an educator. Welcome to those of you who are on Zoom, and welcome to those of you who may be just catching this on Facebook Live. Can you tell us a little bit about your creative process? How do you give birth to a poem?
Well, a lot of my poetry responds to the daily news feed, the stuff that I put on my blog, Gifts in Open Hands, and my Facebook page. So that creative process is very fast and it's like if you're a newspaper writer, it's just for today. But I feel that it's very important to respond to every natural disaster, not have a poem, not have a prayer that you trot out for all of them, but every hurricane,
specific, yeah,
every gun tragedy, every fire. Oh, it's California at fire again. Oh, I'll pull out what I wrote last year for a prayer. I think it's important to be new. But then the other is this sort of seeing other people, observing and responding in particular ways. So a lot of that comes from just writing out that story and then seeing how it lifts up as poetry. Because poetry for story, I have a novel coming up in a couple of years, a cozy mystery. And I have one that's out. Short stories. I write prose, but for telling stories and for writing prayers, the laciness of poetry allows people to hear it really well.
Yeah. Do you have a poem? Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to ask if you had a poem that illustrates what you've just been talking about, sort of that, sort of current, something that's just happened and it demands a poem in that moment, or do you have one of those in mind?
Not in front of me.
Okay, that's fine.
I have to, and I used to have them memorized, and then I got older.
Yes. Do you have another poem you'd like to share, though?
Yes. I have two I might get to share. But this is part of what I was saying. So this is a poem. This is about my relative, Jean. And it's called Opening the Window. The woman cannot go out often because she's caring for her husband, and she hates to ask folks to stay with him when it's not a doctor's visit or grocery shopping. December is full of events she loved to attend in years past, choral concerts, plays at the elementary school where she used to teach, elaborate gingerbread creations at the museum, caroling in the nursing home, well, even shopping. She has missed them all, but most of all Christmas Eve. She used to go to both services, the children's live nativity and the choir's carols and lessons, but not this year. People are with their own families. She'd hardly want to ask them to come here, and then again, she wouldn't want to leave him. But after he's in bed, she goes upstairs to open the window and let in the frosty night air to cool everything down. And just then, bells begin to ring. It's not her own church. In fact, she's not sure what church is upwind of her. She stands in the dark room, looking at a few stars briefly glimpsed, as the snow clouds gather and Christmas comes to her. So why I read that is that I wrote that poem about Jean, and then I got an email from someone who bought the book called Nancy, who said, when all of us kids were grown and gone, my mother Mary was taking care of her mother. Her dad, whose name was John, was a Pennsylvania pastor. And he, of course, was gone Christmas Eve. So Mary, for year after year, would stay home. And what she would do, there was actually physically a church across the street. And she would go to the window, keep an eye on it. There lights, 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 Christmas Eve service. And then it would go dark. And then she would see the candles light. And that was her Christmas, was that she was outside the window and across the street, but that was her Christmas, which is a powerful message for churches, that it isn't necessarily the people you know that you're touching, but it's also, that's why I write. So I write this story because someone's going to remember their story.
Mm.
I got another email from a dad who always did his drop off and pickup between his ex-wife and himself of children at McDonald's parking lots. And it made him want to tell his own story. So a piece of my creative process is writing something that I hope's open enough for somebody not just to say, oh, that happened then, but this reminds me of what happened to me. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It invites people to see more deeply their own story, their own experience, and maybe to tell it even. Yeah,
Yeah, I hope so.
wonderful, wonderful. We have just a few more minutes, but let's see what else we can chat about. I
Okay.
was thinking a little bit about the mission statement of the BTS Center hosting this event. We are the successor to the former Bangor Theological Seminary, and where our mission is to catalyze spiritual imagination with enduring wisdom for transformative faith leadership. And I happen to love all three of those phrases: to catalyze spiritual imagination with enduring wisdom for transformative faith leadership. We've been thinking a lot about these phrases, and they really do guide all that we're doing. And especially we've been thinking lately about that first phrase, about catalyzing spiritual imagination. And it seems to me that the arts are so important for catalyzing spiritual imagination, and maybe especially poetry. Can you think with me for a minute about poetry in particular, about how it connects for you as a spiritual practice, maybe how poetry might be a doorway for catalyzing spiritual imagination?
Yes. And that's a wonderful theme. Let me just say that. And let me say where what I do hooks into it and how that makes.
Yeah, please.
So I teach a lot of poetry classes. I teach people writing poetry, and I actually start in sort of the other direction. I start by asking them to write prayers, because I have found that people realize that everything is okay in a prayer, that you're not wrong. Whereas somewhere in school, frequently people have been told that their poems have to rhyme, or the poems have to do this, or the poems have to do that.
Rules,
So,
rules.
Exactly. So, and sometimes we turn the prayers back into poems, but to start that way, and I always do it in, I will give people choices of different groups of words that they might use. One prayer. So raccoon, evening, moon, garbage would be, and they'd pick it and they go, okay, I have to write a prayer with those words. But before anybody shares them, I do a second exercise, brief, and I always, the time is too tight, as opposed to meditation, which may be long. I force them not to polish, and I force them to use words that don't sound like Almighty Heavenly Savior, we lift up to you, I mean, stained glass words. And then the other one that I will do will be always be that people pick a physical object, because church privileges the people who learn from words and not the people who learn from the tangible objects. And so I have them
Mm.
write two and then share them. And by the time they've done that, and I've called the bell on them and things like that, it has in fact catalyzed a lot of imagination. In fact, they will often say, I had these 6 things I wanted to write about. And I say, stop, write them down now, because otherwise they'll be gone. But that sort of realizing that some people are words and some people are objects, that people need to know it's okay, is
Yeah.
important. That's kind of how I respond to that.
Do you start with prayers in every setting, or particularly in faith communities?
In faith communities,
Yeah.
interfaith, synagogues, churches,
Yeah.
I will not move it that way in a correctional facility, um, in a
And
survivors group.
where would you start in one of those settings? I'm curious.
I would do the same thing with poems.
Right.
So really short,
Yeah.
and some things, like sometimes I put the objects in paper bags so people don't, they actually have to go with what they get and
They're
use that as
drawing
a
them out.
parable.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're taking the, so that idea that Jesus used parables that he probably had not planned months before is an
Right.
important one in terms of your context, for
Yeah.
spirituality.
Jesus was looking around saying, "Oh, look, there's a field. Oh, look, there's a farmer." Right? Yeah, he's
Yes.
telling parables in the moment based on what was
Yeah,
right around him. Yeah,
there
that's
might
great.
be a poster there.
Right, exactly.
But
Exactly.
in writing poetry, there's almost always a treasure. Even
Yes.
if people start out saying, I can't do this, I couldn't do this in school, they can find their way to a pearl of great price. So
Yeah, and what an incredible liberating blessing it must be for them to have that experience with you. Yeah.
thank you.
We
Oh,
are running out of time, and I knew this was going to happen
yep.
because time flies when you're having fun. But maybe you could choose one more poem to share with us before we reach the 1 o'clock hour.
Would you like an overall one, or would you like one about your theme of creation justice?
I think it can be your choice.
Okay. I think I'll do that one about creation justice, just to honor the fact that BTS has made such a powerful. So there were a number of immigration poems. There are a number of,
Hmm.
a variety of poems. But I have a series of poems in which I respond to different parts of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. And this is Scrooge is shown a pawn shop selling the sheets and curtains of his bed and his clothes, if you know that story. God, it's not the sheets and blankets of the bed I've been lying in, but stripped and for sale is the fabric of the earth and the curtains of the polluted sky. The fish are my business, the birds of the air that will sing or will be silent because of what I do. The climate is my business. The health of those who have no bubble is my business. And keeping Christmas all year long is swaddling all that God chose and chooses still.
Mm, it's a powerful note to end on. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to share this conversation with you. If people are interested in following you, in addition to emailing to get a copy of the book, where else can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook, and
Hmm.
everything I post is public, so they can friend me, but they do not need to.
It's there
But
even if they're not your friend per se.
it's all,
Yep.
everything I do is public, which keeps me from being spammed. And my blog is Gifts in Open Hands at wordpress.com.
And it's a wonderful blog. I've been following that for years, and occasionally there are other authors that you're featuring on that blog as well.
At least
Yeah.
one a week
Yeah,
is a
it's
guest
a great,
post from around the world.
yeah.
You know, sort of where I draw.
And I've learned over the years that whenever there is a big moment, a natural disaster or some, you know, a gun violence situation or some, you know, devastating thing that's happened in the world, I can count on a Maren Tirabassi poem to show up on that blog pretty quickly. And it's truly a gift. So we're out of time. Thank you so much again for saying yes to this invitation. It's an honor to be able to spend this time with you. Wish you many, many blessings as we continue through Advent and on to Christmas. And I think I can speak for everybody who's gathered here on Zoom and on Facebook Live in saying thank you for the gift of your poetry.
You are very welcome. And it was just a delighted. I'm looking forward to reading the chat at some point.
Excellent.
So,
We will save it and make sure that it finds its way to you. And thank you to all of you who have gathered here today. Let's see, it looks like we have, how many folks? I can't see at the moment. We've got a good number of people, 39 at the moment, and more on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us today. Blessings and go in peace.